Right, so today you've joined us in Lancaster and we're interviewing Martin.
Gaz.
Gaz. I've started
That's
already.
a good start.
Yeah. We've got Gaz Fisher. He's going to introduce himself, so here we go.
Hi, my name's Gaz, and I have a 15-year history of being on the road and a fairly good knowledge of Gypsy and traveller culture and lifestyle, Roman and Gypsy history, and the laws that are in this country that I've been in for quite some time now, which some of us might not be aware of. And first of all, kind of a disclaimer, first of all, as I was saying to Petulia, no, you're not Petulia, it's Mark. As I was saying to Mark just before there, is that legal disclaimer.
He's got his own back, hasn't he?
Legal disclaimer for Mark and Sue's channel is that I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a solicitor, I have no formal legal training. I just simply spent many long winters reading a Gypsy traveller law book and researching into the history and culture of nomadism and the persecution of travelling nomadic peaceful people over the last 500 years. So that's where my knowledge has come from. And there's been talk quite recently, I think you folks, we've been set up a campaign group regarding not just about what's potentially happening in Morecambe, but what's also happening nationally, which seems to be a clampdown on people's freedoms as far as travelling up and down the road freely, camper vans, motorhomes, whether you live in Nevada, horse-drawn, whatever it is. And there is truth in there that there is a persecution going on, and it's been going on for quite some time. So, to give you a bit of history of this, one of the first acts that was aimed at nomadic travelling people was about 495 years ago, if my math served me right. That was 1530. It was called Henry VIII, the Proclamation of 1530 by Henry VIII. And that was one of the first laws in this country that started marginalising, criminalising a minority ethnic group, which was, as we know now, which was at the times the travellers that came over here from Eastern Europe, free from persecution, and landed in Britain. There was, I think, a wave. The second wave was in the 19th century, and then the third wave of folks came over in the 1960s. So in 1530, you had the Proclamation of 1530, which is by Henry VIII. After that, in 1553, you had the Egyptians Act, where this was by Queen Mary, brought this one in, bless her, where not only was it a criminal offence punishable by death to be a gypsy, it was a criminal offence punishable by death to befriend one. Now that stayed on the statute books in this country for over 2 centuries. In the 19th century, gypsy hunts were organised in Holland, where if you had gypsies on your land, it was perfectly reasonable to hunt them down and kill them, men, women and children. So you can see where this persecution has come from right throughout the centuries. Now, sort of moving on, we got a little bit more civilised. Now it's by legislation. But if we want to see one of the most outstanding examples of this seemingly euphoric hatred of travelling people, would be in the mid-1930s when Hitler and company dropped these Nuremberg laws, a series of 2 laws, I think, one of them containing to marginalise, criminalise the minority group, which was the Jewish folk at the time, bar them from public life, ghettoise them, and then take them to the camps and slaughter them. Caught up in that maelstrom of horror was also 500,000 gypsies that were slaughtered because they were gypsies. Then we moved on, we can go on to, which is coming up, it's the 40th anniversary on June the 1st of this year, which is 1985, which was called the Battle of the Beanfield, which wasn't a battle, it was a battering of the Beanfield. And this came on the back of what Thatcher had done with the miners just some time before, which was to persecute nomadic travelling people who were living an itinerant peaceful lifestyle, travelling up and down the road at festivals, they had musicianship, they had crafts, arts, one thing and another, DJs, performers at these events that had to be stopped because it's difficult to get taxes off people if they're on the road and moving around. They needed to curtail people's freedoms. So these 1,300 police officers, and I believe from speaking to people who were there at the time, and military personnel, corralled 600 travellers in the field, in the vehicles. The police descended on them. Women with children in their arms were dragged out of buses the breast bared, watching the family being beaten in front of them. The vehicles were smashed to pieces. It was outrageous. It was also heavily edited as well by the police, and the government colluded in this as well. And what came out was what you saw on the news at the time. It looked like the travellers were kicking off, and it couldn't have been further from the truth. It was a complete attack by the state on itinerant travelling people. And the 40th anniversary of that is coming up on June the 1st this year, so that's something to consider as well. After that, in 1990s, with the 1994 Criminal Justice Public Order Act, when all them sections that came in, Section 77, your 78, your 61, your 62As, your Part 55s, aiming at people living on the road. Roman and Gypsies, Irish travellers, new travellers, whatever you want to call yourself, it affected you, and it still affects everybody to this day. Later on, in 2014-15, there was the Public Spaces Protection Order, the PSPOs, that came in Brighton, because I was down in Brighton when they came in, and we railed against them. And on the consultation paperwork, I mean, this isn't strictly true, so don't hold me to this, but it was along the lines of how much you not like people living in vehicles, A, B, C, or D, this much, that much, this much. It was a terrible consultation that went around. We fought against, we protested against this. We had a 5,000 signature petition that went to Brighton North City Council, where the mayor just looked at it and decided not to carry it on, so it didn't follow the procedure, that it needed another review, and the public spaces protection orders were brought in. They didn't last too long. We wondered how long it would be before us living on the road at the time. So I lived in Europe for about a year, Spain and Portugal, and then spent about 12-14 years living mainly down the south, around that area down there. And there was a lot of us. Sometimes it could have been 5 or 6 of us, sometimes there's 30 of us. One point we had about 90 odd vehicles, and we're down the race, not the race course, we're down the BMX track in Brighton. If anybody has lived on site, they know where that is, and know it's a big spot down there. We're on there for a few months, and we got kicked off a week before Christmas. That was nice of the council to do that. Happy Christmas. And then in 2022, the Police Crime Sentencing and Courts Act came in, which was a real issue. Whereas previously, living on or parking up on public authority land, or land that you didn't have right to park up on, would be a civil matter. You get Section 77. If it was, say, for argument's sake, it was public authority land, at some point you would get served a Section 77, which is a piece of paperwork that says, Procedure POA 1994, Section 77, persons unknown, you need to bugger off, basically. So, if you know how the law works, you can, if you want, stay for a bit longer, until you get served with a Section 78, which is then, you haven't moved on, Section 78 comes along, that gets served on you, and with the date of when the eviction's going to be. So, depending on how we're feeling at the time, and if we're certain groups of people, everyone had different needs, and one thing or another, might be welfare issues going on, vehicle breakdowns, one thing or another, we decided collectively at times to all move en masse. And sometimes we left it till the 78s turned up, and when the bailiffs turned up in the morning, then we just left, and that was it. If you didn't go, once you got your 78, then you'd be really in trouble, because then it becomes a criminal matter. And then you had your Section 61s and Section 60. You had a Section 61. Hey, you got a Section 61, Mark, didn't you?
We got threatened with a Section 61. We didn't actually get it issued because we ran away before they could actually issue it. Right. So they didn't actually serve us with it. They said to me, because I said, my van is not on this land, it's parked on the highway outside, and he said, you're standing on this land, we'll issue it with you on you as well. Yeah. So I said, no, I'm not on this land, and I buggered off. So lucky I escaped.
Good move. So it's entirely what you want to do, isn't it? I mean, sometimes it's best just to go away. You know, but it was slightly different. I know a lot of folks, like van lifers, as some folks call themselves, or people living in vans, they move around a lot. We kind of didn't, because we were staying in one place working, so we became well known. And so if these laws coming in affected us more than somebody who just tipped up for it. I mean, if you just tip up for a night, somebody says no overnight parking, and you park there and you don't make a mess and you're gone the next day, you're not really going to get anybody bothering you, because it's a civil matter. Could be a private landowner issue. There was one time we went to Devil's Dyke, it's outside Brighton. we parked up an area away from the car park that was all gravel. It was just kind of rough, hard standing. No bays were marked out. We arrived there bank holiday weekend, about 5 of us in pretty big rigs. We parked at the back end out the way so people could park the cars there, and people waving us, we had the dogs out, and people were juggling and stuff like that. It was quite nice. And then the next day we had somebody come along, I think from the National Trust, and telling us that we've got to leave, they're going to call the police, this and that. And it was a bit upset. I got to know him as a friend a year later on, oddly enough, 2 years later on. And we said, we're not moving. We asked him under what section of what law, and he was stuck. And I said, it's Saturday. I said, if you're going to try and get some paperwork served on us, you won't be able to get it court stop until Tuesday, bank holiday weekend. We'll promise you'll be gone by Monday, tidied up and gone. Then we had a chat with him, he sat down, had a cup of tea, and then pretty much said, okay, don't make a mess, and left. And we had a lovely weekend. We left on the Sunday anyway, because on Monday it just got too noisy. There was too many kids there, one thing and another, and it was just too noisy for us, and we just wanted to chill out a bit, really. So we went, and that was that.
Right, so you've said about public land, but what about highway, the public highway?
On the highway, public authority land, including the highway as well, and that's where your CJPOA 1994 comes in. You'll get served that. It's like residing or attempt or seeming to reside or something. I can't remember the exact wording now on the highway, and that could now with the law in the new law in now. It's that broadly written, is that if you parked up say on a lay-by on the highway for a night, as soon as you put your handbrake on and go out and make a cup of tea, technically, if a police officer, whoever he or she or they were, went up and said you need to move and you didn't, technically you're breaking the law, and you could be forcibly removed from your vehicle, have your vehicle taken off you, impounded, and maybe forfeited, given a big fine. And if you've got children with you, that's another issue as well. So it's an extremely, extremely draconian law. Even when this was brought in 2022, or just before it was brought in, even some top police chiefs were going, we don't need any more powers. We've got sufficient enough. One of the things they were stating, and this you can check this out on the FFT website, which I'll come on to in a minute, they were saying that when the governments need to build more transit sites.
Yeah.
We're speaking predominantly here for Romani, Gypsy, Irish travellers here, is that the government are supposed to build so many transit sites, and they're not free. You've got to pay a deposit, you've got to pay for all your gas and that sort of carry on, you hook up, and nobody gets anything for free. They're not getting it for free. But there's just simply not enough, and no government wants to do it. They don't want to be the government that starts building the transit sites for the travellers. And this is what has been causing a problem in some parts of the country, when you get large groups of people wanting to travel, you know, like Appleby Fair, weddings, funerals, marriages, all sorts of bits and pieces. Wedding is a marriage. And so they travel up en masse, and they've got to go somewhere. Now, some people, like me, if someone said, oh, there's a transit site here and you can go and park up on it, I preferably not to. I wouldn't want to. I like to kind of not do that, really. So
with the transit sites, I think what a lot of people misunderstand is as well, you've actually got to register and get accepted for the site. You can't just rock up there anytime you like, can you, and drive on. And you also have to give leaving notice as well, don't you?
Yes, you're right. You can't just turn up there. And there are also times when you'll have certain families living there that might not get on with other families.
Yeah.
There's all that sort of stuff going on, like in everyday life around the place, in settled housing. There's some families that don't get on with others. So it's not as straightforward as that, that's for sure. The laws that have come in, the Police Crime Sentencing and Court Act 2022, is extremely worrying, because it gives the police such massive sweeping powers, although they would be reluctant to actually use. They'd rather use something like CJPOA 9, your section 77s, or in your case, a section 61. It depends what the sort of senior officer present decides to do, or if he or she or they haven't got much of an idea, they'll contact another senior officer and get back and try and relay the information to find out what's the best process, with the most peaceful thing we can do.
Yeah.
So from what you've just said, in the fact that if you're parking on a highway or a lay-by, and they could essentially, well, first of all, ask you to leave. So if you leave, then I guess there's no problem. Right?
That's right.
But if you don't leave,
yeah,
then what you're saying is it's a legal matter, and they could.
It becomes a criminal offence.
Right. So in which case, surely then it's better for us or whoever to park on private land?
Well, there is an issue with private land as well, because if you don't have the owner's consent,
Is it still a criminal matter?
it's not a criminal matter. What it would come on, what they could use is something called Hasbury's law, which is a common law power, which negates the need for councils to have a duty to do welfare checks. It's basically if a landowner or representative or agent of the landowner comes up and says, "This is my land, I want you to move."
The pressure to actually move is a lot more, isn't it? They can insist that you move almost instantly.
You're absolutely right, Mark. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's Halsbury law, Halsbury. I think it's Halsbury law. Some daft bailiff told me one time it was Harbour's law, and I really questioned that, and I couldn't get through to him. I said, "Are you sure? Are you sure it's that Harbour's law?" He's like, yeah. I was like, "Are you sure?" I was like, "Oh, okay, no, it's not." Yeah, you'd have to move immediately, and under CGPOA 1994, and under also Police Crime Sentencing Courts Act, the council would tend, if it's going to be council would have a duty to actually carry out welfare checks. Mechanical breakdowns, is anybody pregnant, like just have a baby or something like that. Under the common law powers, there's none of that, they can bypass that. And they can also employ agents to assist you off the land as well, using reasonable force, which is questionable in law itself.
Okay, so under parish council law, as far as I know, they can't fine you. So what happens if the sign says there is a fine? Because I know of a place in Dorset where the parish council have actually put up a sign saying £100 fine if you stay overnight. How does that apply?
It would apply as far as the council are concerned, but it's questionable, isn't it? Because I think this has got something that came up before on one of your channels. Is that how are they going to execute the fine, and to whom?
Yeah.
And who is the authority that's going to do it? If there's not under like bylaw section so and so, I would think. If it's just a sign that says no parking overnight, then really, I guess it's a civil matter. And if the parish don't want you there and they put that sign up and you stay there, you might get away with it for a night or two, but then again, a third night, you might get some local parish councillor coming, "Hello, you shouldn't be here," or whatever, and so I've never come across that, because there's been that many of us. We've kind of been en masse sort of thing, and all that we've come under was sort of the different laws. But parish law, I mean, we stayed one night I think it was down in Devon somewhere. There's a lovely spot, and it said no overnight camping, and it was about midnight, and I was chatting with my girlfriend, and there was a knock on the door, and I opened the door, and first of all I could smell booze, and there's a bloke stood there and his car was there, and I was like, "Hiya, you can't stay here." I said, "Have you got here?" He went, "I've driven here, why?" "You can't stay here, there's a sign there." I said, "You're drunk." His face changed. You can't camp here overnight." My girlfriend said, "Well, we're not camping, we're just talking." "What?" "But it's a fine, it's like £100 fine." I said, "Look, if you don't leave us, this is going to be harassment." I said, if you don't leave, I'm going to call the police." I said, "Now do your deal. You've been drinking and driving, mate. I'm going to shut this door. When I open it in the morning, you're going to be gone. You're not going to knock on this door again. Simple as that. You're the one that's really in trouble." I said, "If anything, the cop is just going to make sure I'm all right. He'll take me details of my vehicle. I won't give him my details. I'm not committing an offence." I said, "But I'm sure he'll be quite interested in you, how you got here. See you later." Shut the door, and he buggered off, and that was that. So that's the only time, that's the only experience I can say I've had when there's been these, like a park up somewhere where it says no parking.
Yeah.
But if it says under order so and so, like Lancashire City Council, County Council, that's something you need to be aware of, because they can do something to you. They've got more powers to do that. But it's entirely subjective. I don't want to get anybody's backs up by saying you should wild park anywhere, wild camp anywhere. I know that's an issue as well. We're also seeing that I'm a bit critical and cynical when it comes to quite a lot of things, to be honest. I'm 60, I've got a right to be. Is that like the Eden Project Morecambe, and I don't know whether that's tied in to what's happening on the seafront as well, that they don't want camper vans and motorhomes parking up there. I thought they'd welcome camper vans and motorhomes to Morecambe, because it needs the tourism.
Yeah.
It needs the people there, that's for sure. And a diverse group of people as well need to be there. That's pretty much, in a nutshell, of all my ramblings today, that's what this is about. It's empower ourselves and it's educating ourselves. And I said education again, and I really do think we need to take the education into the classrooms as well regarding Roma Gypsy traveller culture and lifestyle. And that's what we need to do. And then we'll have people growing up with a wider understanding about this. And hopefully, eventually, one day, we won't have these silly laws that are going to come in right now. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know whether I'll live to see that day. That day will happen. I'm not sure.
Yeah. So one thing I would like to sort of educate someone on as well is, and this is I learned from the travelling community down at Appleby, is that sometimes when the police turn up with authorization to remove you from a site, they choose a particular person. At the town hall it was me, and they seem to insist that if they tell me that everyone has to move, then that is serving notice on everyone. They didn't tell me to actually move it on the day because there wasn't no authorization for them to move me. The police can't actually move me themselves. They can't remove me from a property if it isn't their property. They can move you from an highway if you're obstructing an highway, but if you're on somebody else's property and they haven't got authorization or haven't been requested to remove you, they can't. So if they sort of turn up and say to me, I want you to remove all your friends, what's that sort of position? What sort of...
Well, there is this thing called nexus, like a joinder, where you could be associated with that group. Right. You know, so if they tell you, because they had it with me, because I went to court, I was known as it was Gary Fisher plus persons unknown.
Yeah.
And they had my name then, so it was always that whatever site I was on, then they associated me with being part of that group, and that somehow I would magically pass that information on. I mean, people knew about it anyway, but they would have to serve removal notice. They couldn't just inform one person.
Yeah.
They'd have to inform the lot, whether it be actually paperwork or getting there saying, right, folks, this is what's happening under section 61, you're all going, you've an hour. You know, and then what they would do, if they could have, because it says here we go, section 61, who can use it? The police. If the senior police officer present at the scene reasonably believes that 2 or more persons are trespassing on land and are present there with the common purpose of residing there for any period, that reasonable steps have been taken by, on behalf of the occupier, to ask them to leave, and A, that any of those persons has caused damage to the land or to property on the land, or used threatening, abusive or insulting words or behaviour towards the occupier, a member of his family or an employee or agent of his, or B, that those persons have between them 6 or more vehicles on the land. He may direct those persons or any of them to leave the land and to remove any vehicles or other property they have with them on the land. Now, failure to comply with that may result in arrest without a warrant and impoundment of your vehicles, which is covered under section 61 as well. We're now under the Police Act 2022, which, as we spoke before, is the Police Crime Sentencing and Courts Act, call it the Police Act for short. Now that's one vehicle, one person.
Yeah.
So that's why the concern is...
And this is why I was concerned when it was 2 persons, but now they've narrowed it down to 1.
And 1 vehicle.
Yeah, and 1 vehicle.
Yeah, making it even more difficult.
Yeah.
You know.
And I will just say that it's very... don't quote me on this, but it's very unlikely that you will get your vehicle seized if you're willing to move.
Absolutely, yeah, you're right. Yeah, we've got to really kind of enforce that. So what we talked about, it's quite gloomy, you know, it's fact, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know what solutions will come for it, but I guess people listening to this can form their own opinions, and maybe the folks who listen to your channel will actually get together and start going, okay, we've got that background information, what can we do with this, and find means and ways of dealing with this.
Yeah.
It is getting more tougher all over, that's for sure.
Why do you think so many people in the travelling van life community don't seem to want to recognise that there's an issue? Why do you think they just sort of bury their head in the sand and say, I don't see it?
Some people want to keep the head down and just get on with their lives and not be bothered about it, and it doesn't affect them because they just want to go away for a couple of days or a weekend somewhere or something like that.
Yeah.
But it is still something that affects our brothers and sisters, and it's really important.
Our kids' future. I mean, we are.
I mean, brothers and sisters in the general global sense.
We're living. Oh, I am living in my van at the time, but people's children's children may want to grow up and live in a camper van or whatever. And if you sort of lose all the rights to be able to do that, you've lost their rights as well. So it ain't just our rights; it's the future generations.
Yeah,
rights.
absolutely. Yeah, that's why I'm fervently supporting them. That's why when I heard on the, I think it was Bear Radio or something like that, it was on the online.
Yeah.
I checked it out and then I thought, okay. And then I saw your channel. I'd listened to your channel, and then I went, okay, I can be some support here with this.
He's got no idea what he's talking about. I'm going to help him out.
You did have that's the thing. You did have an idea what you're talking about, and you've got more than an idea what you're talking about. I do remember you asking me, Matt, one time. You said at the demo a couple of weeks back, said, "Am I wasting my time?" And
Yeah.
I said, "Non-violent, peaceful demonstrations are never a waste of time. Even if there's one person there or 1,000 people there."
Although
Yeah.
there's a lot of people commenting saying it is a waste of time.
Yep, sure.
I think there's been a big change of opinion since the protest. I think a lot of people possibly thought I wasn't going to get as much support as what I got. A lot of people didn't think I'd get any result whatsoever. The fact that someone from the council came along and spoke to us sort of boosted everyone's opinion of what a protest can do. Now, if that happened with 30 to 50 vans, imagine if there was 500 vans or 1,000 vans.
Like they used to be back in the day.
Yeah, imagine on the scale of the Beanfield protest or the Beanfield convoy. Imagine what the scale would be of how many people would take notice. I mean, getting the TV channels involved would take it countrywide. I mean, it hit a more wider community of people and have a bigger effect. And I think that's what needs to happen. I think the persecution of camper van owners is now got to a position where something needs to be done, basically.
Right, and it sounds like you're heading in the right direction with it. Again, would that it were necessary in the first place, but it sounds like you're heading in the right direction with it. I mean, look at what you've done. The pair of you organised.
Yeah.
You've got your channel going. You've organised this protest, which is a hell of a thing to do. A hell of a lot of responsibility. No doubt, a lot of stress and pressure on you. You had over 50 vehicles turning up, people from all parts of the country. You know, you went through Morecambe there. It's caused people to start talking about this in Morecambe. I'm getting covered in them little sugar stagglers. And I turned up with some information, so it's quite a positive event that was going. There's no two ways about it. And as far as communication from the council is concerned, I mean, you've had one councillor, independent councillor, turn up. Martin Bottoms, wasn't he? He turned up, and then he said he'd pass it back, and then see what goes on from there on in, and then just take it from there. I mean, but yeah, a critical mass is always helpful of people, but a lot of people are really concerned, you know, are they going to lose the motorhome, and are they going to get in trouble with the police? And this is why once you understand the laws and acts and statutes, not there's no tinfoil hat going on there, you know, not all the stuff, the wild conspiracy theories you might hear about this, but you take that off, you put your legal cap on, you look at all the paperwork and the information there, you see what laws, once you know the laws, how it works, like that instance I did, you need some brass balls, I just did that day. But even though I was a bit, oh shit, no, you had coppers and there was traffic wardens and there was traveller liaison people there, and I just went, well, as long as I stand on the law, I'm fine.
So we are about to run out of camera battery, unfortunately.
Back in 70s.
Back in the day, well, I'm probably younger than you, so
yeah. So back in the day, then, yeah.
Back in the day, when the
us
dinosaurs, you know.
Yeah.
No, how would you identify yourself as? Would you have identified yourself as a traveller?
Yeah, if you wanted the term traveller, I'd use that.
Because we've had that before on videos, haven't we? When we've grouped everybody that travels as a traveller just to make it easier,
it's easier.
For talking wise. And we had some comments from, I'm guessing they were Gypsy travellers, who said, "You're not travellers, you can't call yourself travellers." But it's like, well, we did try and explain to start with at the beginning of the video that we were just looping everybody in the traveller, calling everybody traveller, because it was so difficult to say traveller, motorhomer, vanlifer, gypsy. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So it's interesting that you would have identified yourself as a traveller.
It would have been that, because that's kind of what I mean. I didn't make a point of saying I'm a traveller. It's just that that's what we came under, and that's what we kind of were. Some of us were fairly settled travellers who didn't move the rigs for a year or two, but those of us, for the sake of ease, when we're sort of in conversation with people, or what you do for a job, and that sort of carry on, it's easy enough to say traveller. And that's what it was, because we went into Spain and Portugal, travelled around, came back, but we're staying in places quite a lot of the time, 3 months here, 2 months there, and then stayed in Brighton for some years. So yeah, to answer, it would be traveller as such.
Did you find it easier in Europe? Did you get moved on in Europe as well? This is probably not going to be in the video. I'm just curious.
No, not only yes, only a little bit, because we were staying in godforsaken places in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
Absolutely middle of nowhere, like in. I think I stayed in a little place in Portugal called Freixanda. I don't even think Google Maps has got it. It's in a forest in like the sort of central northern Portugal, and it was like, I think 15 miles to the nearest little village. So there was nobody else around except 2 or 3 travellers in vehicles. That was us, and then we went out, and so we never really got bothered. The only time we got bothered was got a gun in our faces one time. We were down in Tarifa when some of the Guardia Civil come up, and my Spanish wasn't brilliant, and I thought he said, you need to go in an hour. He said, hora. Is it hora? Is hora is now, hour is hour. I got it cocked up, and I thought he said you can go in an hour. I went, yeah, fine, man. So I ignored him and got on with cooking my chicken, and he looked round, and what he said in Spanish was, you need to fucking go now. And I was like, yeah, man. And then my mate, who was German, came up, and he goes, oh, we're going in an hour. And he goes, no, now. And he got his gun out, and it all went, my mate grabbed his gun, and I was like, oh, this could get a bit sticky. And that was the only time we got moved on as such, a little bit there. We went there and then put my chicken back in the oven and drove my truck to another site with my chicken in the oven, which was great. When I got back, it was cooked, and it still stayed in the pan as well. It didn't smash the oven, because that was a concern. We got moved on more here, because there was quite a lot of us, and it was regular. Within a year, if there's a lot of us, we could get eviction notices 5 or 6 times, or something like that, and it was always a big site move, and we just moved around. So it's more in this country.
A bit like the Gypsy travellers do. They move sort of en masse, don't they?
Yeah, because there's groups of families and stuff like that, and it can be quite awkward,
I mean, I do really feel for them, when you see, there's a few things on YouTube and things like that of them having to move on and find somewhere else to go, and it is traumatic. And
I think with getting some responses back, say if it's from like the Irish traveller community or Romani Gypsy community responding back, if saying that you're not real travellers, maybe they're looking at that you didn't put. You're not putting everybody on the guise of traveller, as in Romani or Irish traveller. Maybe they just didn't see that. I mean, what I'm wearing on the right hand side here, this is your Manco Flaco, which is, you folks will be aware of it, which is, it's the sort of 16-spoke Derma Chakra it's originally based around. It's international sort of Romani Gypsy traveller flag, and I wear it just as respect and honour to them as well. And on the left there's maybe a little Palestine flag as well. And the irony of that, it's oppressed people on the right and oppressed people on the left. So we've all got these commonalities. We've got more in common than we have differences. That's for sure. When we can look at, like, as I said, about the oppression of the Palestinians by the Israelis, the oppression of when Romanis came over here. We had the Romani folks coming over, and then the oppression that went on there. And now we've moved up to where we started off earlier on in this conversation, where we're at now, where it seems there is an oppression going on. There is a move to limit people in camper vans and motorhomes, their freedoms as such, and where they wish to go, And it's been so throughout history as well. And now we're at another level of it right now, which needs to be resisted at all costs.
But so what's your view on the council being able to ban a motorhome or camper van and not see a HGV? Because an HGV driver will be asleep in his cab, a coach driver will be asleep in the coach. So work vans even, what's your thoughts on the discrimination, the fact that it's a camper van? Do you think there's any sort of legal aspect that you could challenge it with?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you could just actually put that down. I mean, you could just write that out to actually get someone to actually state from the council who are making this, who are going to make these orders, as to what are the valid reasons they are putting them in, and what about such things. Is there going to be a dispensation for, say, disabled, accessible vehicle, disabled vehicles, coaches, HGVs on there? Because to pick on a minority group of people for that, I think it's a bit harsh. And there would, if you could put that in writing, then I think then that's what the council would have to, duty bound, to answer that. They can't just say, right, we're banning them but going to leave those there. We're going to leave the HGVs and coaches. But they might look at that. I mean, this is off the top of my head, and there be something there. Well, the coach has got it's got a park up. Is there a coach bay?
No.
Do they have coach bays there? Because that might be for a start, the ban hasn't come in yet. It's just been talked about, so there isn't a ban. But it's been.
There is in St Anne's.
So there is one in St Anne's, and it might be coming to Morecambe. And then we've got to look, because what they're going to start doing is start making coach bays and things like that. Coaches only parking here, or HGVs here. I would think, though, that the great scheme, they might want them off too. I don't know. But it seems right now they're concentrating on motorhomes and camper vans. And if this is to take this further, they're the sort of questions that need to be put down on paper and asked directly and responded to directly by the council. So to show that they can't just make up, we're just going to ban them because we've heard somebody said, somebody's written in, or we don't like them, they cook inside the vans or they cook outside, there's been washing out, or someone's emptying the cassette loo down the drain or something. You've got to have more than that before you can start banning something.
There was even one gentleman who complained that he'd been flashed at by a woman. It wasn't you, was it, Sue?
Got flashed at. Right.
He was probably privileged.
Traumatic event.
Right, so from me personally, I don't even like Morecambe Promenade. I've said that many times. It's too bloody noisy, too much traffic. I like to be out the way, places like the Lake District, National Trust areas, English heritage areas, out in the hills basically I like to go. So what happens if I'm parked up there and a ranger turns up and says, can you move, mate? No parking here.
Well, if that's the case, I would think then there would need to be, wherever that might be, hypothetically speaking, there'd need to be some signage.
Right.
And then if there wasn't, and a park ranger turned up, certainly under what section of what law? Ask them that.
Yeah.
That's a start. And then usually they just clam up. No disrespect to park rangers, bless you all, but that's the thing, to find that no parking here. Who says?
Mm-hmm.
What are they going to do? They haven't got the law to arrest you and pay. They're not the police. And if somebody turns up on like Sunday afternoon or something like that and says, oh, you can't be here, you can't stay here overnight, just ask them under what section of what law and under whose authority operating under.
Yeah. I'm guessing from my point of view, if anyone did ever turn up, it would be after closing hours, I guess, after 10 o'clock at night, because if it says no overnight parking, it's obviously going to be at night before he comes to bother me. So he's probably going to have no one to sort of phone up and get any.
No, he'd probably just take your number, your reg number, something like that, and then he'd just bugger off.
Yeah.
And then he or she, whoever they are, would just leave. That'd be it. And then they'd ring up somebody in the office. There'd be nobody there to speak to, I guess. I don't know what the current situation was there. A friend of mine, he used to park up in National Trust places with his big rig, a big Dodge 50, big heavy beast it was. And he became a member of the National Trust.
Right, yeah.
So when he used to park up in some of the National Trust areas, he'd put his sticker there, he'd come up and go, you need to leave. He says, I'm a bloody member.
Well, there are some new signs going up, particularly around the Lake District, that says no sleeping in vehicles. So it's not even an overnight ban, but how do you sort of distinguish between sleeping in a vehicle and being in your vehicle at night? Or
it's probably a local thing, unless there's actually something under that states under section so and so of whatever act you know, and then if it does, just Google it and find out about it and look into it and think, well, we can stay here for 3 days, it's absolutely fine, someone might come, but whatever, or just go, okay, we'll stay here for the night, and if somebody comes along, you might get somebody you don't want to get anybody's back up, that's for sure. You don't want to knock on your door at 11 o'clock at night by somebody. It's not nice. Maybe not nice for you, it's not nice for them, you know, or what the people are going to be like, you know, and it's like, I think it's got that busy as this is the Lake District, is that, you know what it's like, you've been up there obviously at peak times and seen what it's like. It can be mayhem up there with vehicles just trying to get everywhere, with tourists everywhere. Windermere, Bowness is rammed, one thing and another, people looking for places to go in the camper vans and caravans and that sort of carry on. I'm a bit biased the other side, you see, because I see it. If people are not causing any harm, vehicles can get by, they're not obstructing any gates or fences and making a mess, you know, then I've at it.
Yeah,
I'm just a bit that way, so I'm slightly biased the other side, to be honest. Yeah. I mean, I can't sit on the fence with. I can see one point of view of it, but for me, and fairly old school, as long as you're not doing anybody harm, just go ahead and do it. That's me.
Can I just say as well, if anyone does come knocking on your door at night, just be polite. Tell them you'll move in the morning, and hope for the best that no police don't turn up and try and move you. So don't sort of get agitated or wound up and become aggressive, or it'll just make us all look bad. So yeah, just be polite and agree to move on at another time, but not exactly right now. Right, I'd like to thank Gaz for coming along. If you'd like to see that live, we'll have to pressure him to get him to come. So yeah, thanks Gaz for turning up today, giving us your time.
Yeah, and I hope I've managed to sort of, although I've rambled on a bit, I hope I've managed to be able to give over some points to people, some talking points, and stimulate a conversation, maybe into action as well. And yeah, and remember folks, home is where you park it.